Hey everyone. I am just so happy to be here today with Rick Henkin. And Rick and I are just meeting for the first time. We've just messaged each other a few times, but we're really just meeting for the first time. I'm really excited to get to talk to him. Excited to talk to you, Rick.
Okay.
And what I know about you, Rick, is that your wife, Sonya, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease
Right.
in January of 2020
Correct.
at the young age of 65 years old.
Yes.
Um, I know that you know how the burden of care takes a toll on people's lives and that you're determined to not let this disease take you down as well.
Hmm.
Um, and that you started a Facebook group called, and let me make sure I have the title right. It's For Family Caregivers
Correct.
Eliminate
FOR.
Stress.
Yeah.
FOR, yeah, For Family Caregivers Eliminate Stress, Anger, and Guilt.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank you for having me, Laura. I really appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. I can tell already. We had a nice
You
little
get the
chat
idea that I
before.
like people?
We had a great little getting to know each other
Yeah.
conversation about our grandkids and all of the beauty in life, right?
Okay.
So, Rick, I'll just start out with a question. We'll just jump right in if you
Okay.
don't mind. And you have been so open about how your wife's Alzheimer's diagnosis in 2020 changed your life.
Hmm.
I'm really curious if you could take us back for a moment and I want to know like what shifted when you realized that you were stepping into the role of caregiver, what that meant to you when you noticed that, what did that mean during that
Sure.
time?
Well, in 2019, I noticed that Sonya had absolutely no attention span. I mean, we couldn't sit there and watch TV without her getting up and I go, Sonya, just wait for the commercial, wait for the commercial. And something in my mind told me this is beyond just a primary care physician, and I wanted to search out someone who specializes in this. So I found the Pacific Neuroscience Institute in Santa Monica, California. They're nationally known, and their whole focus is brain health. Uh,
Okay.
their doctors are, Yale, UCLA, Harvard, all of them.
Big time. Yeah.
And I made an appointment. And my hope was that the doctor would just adjust. Sony was on antidepressants. And my
Okay.
hope was they'd say, oh, we'll just, change that. And on the way there, Sonia is saying, why do we have this appointment? You need this appointment. I don't need it. You need it. And she's resisting and she's arguing with me. And we get there, and the doctor asks the what was he? Not a neurologist. I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
neurologist
Yeah.
was asking her questions. He explained that there's several different parts of the brain that process things. So he was trying to reach all those, repeat these words after me, that type of
Yeah.
thing. But he finally came to the infamous clock test, which I assume most people are familiar with. So he had her draw a circle, which she did. She drew the numbers. Then he asked her to draw the hand showing 10 to 11, and she just stared at it. Literally 5 minutes passed and we both started to cry. And that's when she realized she had a problem. I mean, at that point, it was
Yeah.
mild cognitive impairment.
Right.
And we were told that it's like a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out what type of dementia. So it took
Yeah.
several months, uh, a whole lot of CAT scans. And finally, in January of 2020, they did an amyloid PET scan and diagnosed her as having Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So you asked me, how did my thoughts change or my becoming a caregiver? Ironically, I had purchased my son and I had purchased a senior helpers franchise uh,
Oh, wow.
at the same time.
No.
And if you know familiar with senior helpers, I mean they put
Yes.
caregivers into people's homes. But by the time we got our license and opened our doors, it was April 1st, 2020, start of COVID. Nobody wanted anybody to come into their home. Nobody wanted to go to anybody's home. So we ended up closing that. But I learned about the burden of care and the toll it takes on the caregiver. And I'm not sure a lot of people realize that. Sure, they understand if they're stressed or they're angry or they're resentful, but the toll it takes on them. I read an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association that said that family caregivers have a 63% higher risk of dying than their peers who aren't caregivers. I mean, that's just huge.
Yeah. And I really want to, because we talk about that on this podcast a lot, the
Okay.
importance of supporting the caregiver. And it's so hard sometimes to even use that word. I would be curious to know what your thoughts are about the word caregiver, because I think people don't identify as a caregiver. They identify as a husband or a wife or a daughter or a son, or, the idea of a caregiver feels like this
Right.
label sometimes to some people. And so um, part of this question, I know I'm diving a little deeper, but is how do you feel about that name and that role? And at what, yeah, like I said, at what point did you realize, oh, I'm not just the partner, spouse. This is a
Mhm.
whole nother role that I'm taking on as well.
My focus, honestly, was taking care of myself. First of all, by doing
Okay.
that, I could take better care of her. But I was bound and determined not to let this disease take me down as well.
Okay.
And to make things more difficult, Sonya developed what's called Capgras Syndrome. It's named after a French psychiatrist. You're familiar with it?
I'm very familiar with
Okay.
Capgras, and I'll let you explain it to our
Okay.
listeners. Yeah.
It's an irrational belief that the person whose face she recognizes, me, is an imposter. And you can't shake that with pictures or other people telling her that, no, that's your husband. We'd be watching TV, and all of a sudden she'd look at me and say, where do you live? What are you doing here? I want you out of here before I call the police. And then she'd run next door to tell the neighbors about the strange man in their house. So I take a walk, come back in a half an hour or so, and find her crying, wondering where I'd been because she had no recollection of what had taken place.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
And, it was maddening, of course. Um, Fortunately, that Capgras syndrome didn't last very long. It lasted a couple of months and then just fell by the wayside. But as so often happens, as the disease progresses, it gets more and more difficult as the caregiver. You have to really you have to learn. What I thought at the time was, well, this can't be a new issue. I did some research online. I've got to find information. And on website after website, I found the same basic information. Find 15 minutes for yourself, take a walk, exercise, meditate. It's all great and it's helpful, but it had nothing to do with my feelings and my emotions.
Mm,
And that's when I realized I have to do this myself. Mine is the only brain that can change. Sonia's brain wasn't going to change.
yeah.
And I started working on myself. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kept talking to myself, don't let this take you down, be there for Sonia. And I finally made it through to what I call my heaven island. And
Mm,
my heaven island is just a place where it's a place of peace. It's a place of acceptance. It's a place where I can care for Sonia without it taking my health, taking me down. And I thought, well, let's see what else is out there. Maybe I can help other caregivers.
mm,
So I went on Facebook, dozens and dozens of Facebook groups for family caregivers, tens of thousands of members. And I started looking through, and most of the people, they were ranting. I realized they needed an outlet, but I can't do this anymore. How long is this going to last? What about my life? One woman is contemplating suicide because it's easier than taking care of her husband. I mean, it made me want to cry because I thought, okay, I figured out a way I can help other people. So I started my own Facebook group, and it's just it was my way. I call it my way of giving back. I don't know, but I mean, I still, what it comes down to, and I say this for everybody listening, acceptance. You are not in control of the disease. Doesn't matter how great of a caregiver you are, you're not in control of disease. And it's most likely only get more and more difficult.
mhm.
Um, so one of the things I teach, I created this course called Caregiver Mastery. And I teach people, you have to accept it. Quit resisting, because when you resist, it just makes it more difficult. And again, you're not going to change anything. You can't do anything.
What you resist persists.
Well,
Yes.
exactly, exactly. Going
Yeah.
back to the story with Sonya, uh, Sonya went from being the grandmother who would be on the floor playing with our granddaughters, dress up, makeup. She was their best friend. She went from that to being the scary grandmother. And she went to a daycare originally, adult daycare, strictly for dementia patients. And they loved her there. She'd help them set up the activities, break them down. Excuse me. Never knew what I was going to get when I got home, when she got home. We live in a duplex. So one family, one of our kids lives upstairs with his family. She'd run upstairs, bang on the door, 20 times a night. They stopped opening it. Kids are doing their homework. They're trying to eat dinner. And I didn't want to do anything because it was expedient for me. That didn't seem right. But one day, my son calls me upstairs. His wife is from Oregon, so the kids were with her visiting family in Oregon. And he says, "I want to tell you about this new job I'm interviewing for." And cool, that's great. He says, "It's in Ashland, Oregon," and my heart just sank. It's like, you're abandoning me. And he said it's the most difficult decision he ever had to make, his mother or his family. And I decided, like I said, I didn't want to do anything that was expedient for me. By the way, he never did move, thankfully. I called up her her neurologist. I spoke to her nurse practitioner. I spoke to her psychologist, and I said, "Why is it when she's at the daycare, she's helpful, they love her, and she gets home, it's a different story?" And it was explained to me that they she has structure at the daycare, and at home it's like the Wild West. And they all thought it was probably time for her to move into a memory care facility. Uh, so I did that. Sonya lived there for about not quite 2 years until the long-term care insurance ran out. It's incredibly expensive in this country, as anybody who's checked into it knows. 24/7 care in LA is about 25,000 a month.
Wow.
Anyway, she was, I'd visit her every day. I made it a point to let everybody know who I was. I'd sit in the executive director's office and just schmooze the memory care director's office, not talking about caregiving, just becoming friends and talking about other stuff. I did that pointedly, figuring, maybe they'll pay more attention to Sonya because they like me.
Yeah. Can we pause there?
Of
This
course.
is such an important piece that families wrestle and struggle with is
Mhm.
I mean, you kind of fast forwarded through, you moved her. I mean,
Right.
there's a whole piece that we can talk about it if you want to, about
Sure.
that decision-making process and how you came to the conclusion that it was time to do that. Was it the most helpful to hear from a professional that it was time, or did you have discussions with your family? Like, what helped you come to that decision?
The discussions with the professionals. And
Okay.
again, these were, I call them brain doctors versus
Yeah,
primary
yeah.
care physician.
Neuropsychologist,
Yeah,
neurologist,
they know what the
gero,
mood is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they
So it's
they made me feel
validating.
better about it.
Yeah.
It was still very, very difficult. I mean, the family came with me when it was move-in day, and they just, I said, so, I asked at the memory care facility, so, how does this work? And they just, after we were there for a little while, they just said, just leave. And they locked the door behind us, which made me just feel terrible. Uh, of course, I got used to it. I mean, they have to do that. They have memory care on one side, assisted living on the other side. And just like Sonya was at the daycare, they all loved her because Sonya is the type of person who'd give back. She'd hug them, she'd give them little cheek
Oh,
kisses. Um,
wow.
it was nice. I felt like, okay, I found a good place for her. And I say to other people who are wrestling with that decision,
Yeah.
assuming you can afford and you find a nice place, your loved one is going to be supervised. Your loved one is safe. They're not going to wander someplace. They're not likely to get hurt. They're going to get their medication on time. That's all very important. I'll tell you, I saw so many people that were residents there. Nobody ever visited them. It's like drop them off and forget about them. People. I could never do that, and I could never be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
you mentioned also that you made a point to spend a lot of time getting to know the staff and sitting with the
absolutely,
administrator. And, this is something that comes up a lot, is this, that, when I meet with folks one-on-one and for counseling or coaching, and we talk about this, sometimes this dynamic, it is a power dynamic. You are leaving your loved one, your precious family member, in the hands of a system, individuals you don't know, people that don't know her
right.
history, people that don't know her preferences, like almost like, we were talking about our grandkids earlier. I'm getting ready. We're getting ready to move my little grandson into daycare for the first time, and it's so, but that feeling of just vulnerability and trust, and so, to that point, families often feel an importance of, I think it goes both ways. You are seeking to feel comfortable with the setting that she's in,
Right.
familiarizing yourself. So it's not an institution, or it's not a separate setting. It feels like a second home to you too. But also, there's this difficulty that can come up of, man, you are the advocate on one hand. Your role is to fight for her and make sure she's getting the care she needs. And on the other hand, you're recognizing, I have to maintain this quality connection and rapport with these
Right.
people that are caring for her. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? That
Sure. It's interesting that you use the word advocate, because that's exactly how I always saw myself. I was her advocate. And I put myself in the middle of everything with respect to medication. It all came from me. I'd be the one to talk to the nurse practitioner who then said the order to the facility, but I wanted everything to go through me.
yeah.
We tried different things. We tried some, marijuana, medication, etc. But yeah, I wanted to be, look, she's my wife. We've been together for 34 years. And I know she would do the same thing for me. That's one thing that caregivers have to realize. It could just as easily have been you. How would you want your loved one to take care of you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really,
Wow.
it really comes down to it. I
And
realize,
part of
yeah.
that, I just want to call out what you said before, is they'd want you to care for yourself. That's
Oh
also,
yeah,
it's both ways, right? Yeah.
yeah. Um, there was a few months ago. Sonya's at home, like I said. She's been at home for over a year, and I'm glad she is. A few months ago, I was getting her ready for bed, and the thought came to me that as caregivers, we're cast in a unique role because our loved ones are so dependent on us. I now call it a gift, but we have the gift to either make the rest of their lives joyful or miserable. And I determined I'm going to make Sonya's life as joyful as I can. When the time comes, I'm not going to look back and say, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have said that. I don't want that. I don't want to have any situation where I think I could have done something differently or something better. And
Can
it's,
I,
oh,
I'm so curious,
yeah,
because she's home now.
right.
So initially, the beginning years of getting the diagnosis and having her at home and learning as you go, like literally. And then there was a period of time where she was in the facility. How long was she in memory care?
22 months.
22 months. Okay.
22 months. Yeah.
So that's 2 years of
Mhm.
having uh, a different way of caregiving. I mean,
Right.
you were still 100% caregiving as the advocate, the overseer.
Right.
You were able to, my guess, be with her in a very different way than if you were the primary, if you were providing primary care, like with her
Right.
ADLs and her,
Right.
So you were able to develop a different caregiving relationship while she was in the facility. Now that she's home,
Mhm.
what is that like? That I can imagine the stark
I,
difference.
I'm going to tell you something that I don't know if this will, anger other caregivers, but caregivers,
Yes,
they
yeah.
want to get away from their loved one. That's their respite. I look forward to picking up Sonia every day from daycare and for having her on the weekends because she's my respite from dealing with everything else in life because I
Oh
can
my
focus on it.
gosh. Talk about that. Why? Why is that? What is
Because I
the
don't have to
essence
focus
of
on
that?
everything else. I can just enjoy her and make plans. We'll get together with friends for brunch. We went yesterday for a couple birthday parties for friends. And yeah, it's not, as time goes on, she's not as, she doesn't respond. She doesn't engage much anymore, which is unfortunate. But she still has a sense of humor. I look for those things.
Yeah.
If I can skip around for a moment.
Please do. Yeah, this is
Okay, okay.
yeah.
I always tell people you got to look for the humor, not to make fun of our loved ones, but just to look for the humor in the situation. So we went to IHOP, International House of Pancakes, and I'm paying. We're getting ready to leave, and Sonya just snatches a pancake off somebody else's plate.
Oh no.
And the person, I was embarrassed. The person was so nice about it. Everybody's always been nice. It's like they get it right away that she's not
Wow.
she's harmless.
Yeah.
And he said that's okay. And I love this. In my haste to get out because I was embarrassed, I opened the only alarmed door in the restaurant and the siren went off. Everybody's now looking at me.
Everybody's looking
Tony's
at
just
you.
standing there eating her pancake.
Oh my gosh. You can't crawl under a rug anyway.
No, no. Another time we were visiting her sister, and a couple blocks away there was a concert going on in a park. So we walked over there, hundreds and hundreds of picnic goers. And as we're walking through, I look over, and Sonia's got a bottle of Diet Pepsi in her hand. I didn't buy it for her. She just took it off somebody's thing. And I'm thinking that guy later on, when he's thirsty, he's not going to be able to find it. He's very fast. But
Oh, I
yeah.
love it. Oh, I love
And
it. You know what I hear you saying too is just with humor
yes.
and to your point when you made the comment about how much you look forward. Like I'm so curious about that. I want to hear this another story too. But I
Yeah.
have to call out like I think there's something here. We talk about this a lot. This what does like I always think I'm so like I think from more of a esoteric or spiritual
Yeah.
perspective, what is the universe teaching us about dementia? Like of all things. And the thing I keep coming back to is to live in the moment.
Mhm.
There's no future, there's no past, there's the memory and the reasoning. It's like truly living in the moment. And when you talk about humor and you talk about when you look forward to being with her, how
Mhm.
there's nothing else. It's just
Mhm.
that. It's
You have
just
to be
that.
present. Yeah,
Yeah, you have to be present. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
and I don't want to give the impression that nothing bothers me. I get frustrated, but I'm mindful of it. And when I
Okay.
feel my anger, if you will, coming up,
Hmm.
I say I stop it because what I do, I'm looking out for myself and my own health. And
Yes.
I don't want to raise my blood pressure, get myself upset. What's the purpose? When Sonia first came home, one of the things she would do, she'd go through the house and turn on every water faucet. Okay.
Mm.
I can explain to her it's a terrible waste of a precious resource. I can yell at her. It doesn't do any good. She'll just say yes and then do it again a few minutes later. So I just stopped. Now, when I hear the water running, I just go turn it off. I save my own health. I don't get upset
Yeah.
with Sonia. And that's what a lot of it, you have to change your mindset and look at things differently. That's really
Okay.
what it comes down to.
How did you do that? This is what I know our listeners are hearing you. And
Right.
also, how do you take, our brain and the grooves and, connections that we have in our brain of repetition and how do you change how you've always been? How did you do this? How did you do that?
I mean, again, I say I worked on myself, and I know you're asking, what does that mean? Um,
Yeah.
again, it came down to looking at things differently and looking at
Okay.
things from my perspective and my health. How does it benefit me to get upset, to yell?
Okay.
It doesn't. And it
Okay.
only makes our relationship more difficult.
Yeah.
You have to look at things like that. Again,
Yeah.
it's not going to change, and it doesn't matter how great of a caregiver you are. It's
Hmm.
the disease. The disease is going to win out every single time. And
Oh, yeah.
you
And I
know,
think that's unconsciously what people are fighting, right? Is that
yeah, and I
you're
understand that.
if I accept if by changing and yeah, by changing my approach or it's an
Mhm.
acceptance on some level of the disease, which we resist. I had
Yeah.
an interview with I can't remember what number it is, but Marty Schreiber was a governor of Wisconsin, ex-governor, prior
Okay.
governor of Wisconsin, and he's saying the same thing you are, Rick.
Mhm.
It was really interesting to listen to his story too about what I heard him say is he resisted it for a long time. He
Right.
fought that. He would have been telling her to turn the water off and explaining why. And
Yes.
it was really insightful to listen to his, journey and
Mhm.
story and that recognition to exactly what you're saying is I can fight this and it's only making his health worse and her
Right.
experience worse. And so what I'm hearing you say is there was something in you that saw that pretty early on that I am only we are only going to be better if I'm better.
Mhm.
If I'm
Oh, absolutely. And again, it doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated or stressed,
right,
but
right.
I catch myself, or I try to catch
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
It hurts me to see the hurt and confusion in Sonia's eyes when I have yelled about stuff.
right,
That
right.
serves no purpose. That serves no
Yeah,
purpose. Uh,
yeah.
one of the things I've learned, well, going back to the male caregivers are different because we've grown up differently. We're
I'm
fixed.
glad you're saying this. This
We're,
was one of the
yeah.
questions that I have for you is what
All right.
tell us about your experience as
Well,
a man.
men are fixers, and we can't fix this. And we have to accept that we can't fix this.
Yeah,
It's not a problem where we can figure out, well, if we just go down to the corner store and get this, I can take, you can't do any of that stuff.
yeah.
And, women are traditionally more of the nurturers in life. And a lot of the caregiving falls on women,
Mhm.
rather than men. Um, but yeah, it's just men have to, men need support just like anybody else, whether it's a support of a group or your friends or family, whatever it may be. And you're better off getting together with like-minded people because other people just probably don't understand. Well, why
Yeah.
don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I call them armchair generals. Hey, Mr. Armchair General, Mrs. Armchair General, why don't you take over for a weekend and then we'll talk? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of times that happens with families and it sounds like you have a pretty supportive and aware family that lives near you. I we get people have that experience if they have a sibling or even their adult children that live
Mhm.
somewhere that are feeding advice or
Right.
they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Even if they're being and often they are trying to be supportive
Right.
even if they're saying just go take a break go
Yeah, I
do
know.
this
I
they
know.
don't understand what that
Yeah, they haven't walked in our shoes, and every caregiver's journey is different
yeah
because every loved one is different.
yeah
There isn't a one size fits all.
hmm
Um, I'm trying to think what else to tell you, but
well
yeah, go ahead.
I want to stay on this
Okay.
idea, this thread of what it's like to be for male caregivers, because
Mhm.
I feel like there's, in what I've seen over the years, is that there's an added layer of isolation for men.
Mhm.
I think, and I'm making a total generalization here, so
Mhm.
forgive me for that. But I think often men, and again, we're talking about certain generations of men as well, are the fixers, and they are the ones that they aren't taught how to ask for help.
Exactly.
They're not taught how to receive help. Um, they're supposed to know it all, or
Mhm.
supposed to have the answers. Um, and often, especially when we're talking about a spouse,
Mhm.
this is your partner. This is a person that you have walked through your adult life with,
Mhm.
usually, and you've shared. And the person that, often, again, a generalization, but that you're the most intimate with, that
Mhm.
you would be going to process this, the
Right.
fear or the unknown or the decision making, and that is the one person that you're not able to access
Right.
during that
Right.
time.
I mean, look, none of us, male or female, ever learned how to deal with this. There's no courses in high school, no courses in
Yeah.
college. Men, we don't even ask for directions. Come on.
Right.
I mean, but
Yeah.
one thing this is, well, it's an aside from caregiving, but it relates. One thing I learned years ago, a lot of times people are afraid to raise their hand and ask a question because, a fear of looking dumb. Who cares? The person you're asking didn't know the answer at one time either, and you know things that they don't know. And to me, that's the equalizer. So I've never been afraid of asking for help or asking for directions. How else am I going to
Yeah.
learn?
Yeah. Yeah. You have a healthy sense of um, being curious and
Yeah.
being open to. So, what would you say if you were to give any men out there that are listening advice, like maybe two or three things that you have seen, in your journey,
Mhm.
and with your caregivers that you work with, in your Facebook group and such. What what are you noticing that men struggle with the most? What advice would you give to them?
Asking for help,
Okay.
acknowledging that they need help,
Yeah.
that, nobody can do it all alone. And the other thing, and this goes for all caregivers, and I say this unequivocally, you're doing the best you can, and that's good enough. Don't don't beat yourself up. What would you say to somebody, a friend that came to you and was having the same difficulties that you're experiencing? You'd be kind to them, you'd
Yeah.
support them, you'd be patient. Do that to yourself.
Yeah.
Again, we were never taught this, and you're doing the best you can. And
Mhm.
that's really good enough.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
That's how I
Yeah.
look at it.
For
And
sure.
again, how your loved one is progressing has nothing to do with your caregiving. You're not in control of the disease.
Oh, that is an important statement. And I think even if people know that consciously,
Hmm.
they may not know it in their subconscious.
Right.
They feel like somehow they have control, or if they just did something different, or if they would have gone in sooner, or if they ate fed them
Yeah.
certain food or did certain things. It's
Right.
so hard to um accept, to be in a space of acceptance,
Hmm.
and that shifts everything from this space of guilt and control to I don't know if there's a better word for acceptance, but
Hmm.
the theme of our conversation today that I'm hearing is just being, like he said, in the moment and taking care of yourself, and
Hmm.
not getting caught up in the control, trying to control
Right.
the disease or control the behavior or control.
Right. I mean,
Because
the concepts are simple to say,
yeah. Right.
You have to learn, which is what I try to teach in my course. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about mindfulness. It's about limited beliefs that you may have. It's about distorted thoughts,
Love
and
it.
it's about changing your perspective. One thing I don't know where I had this idea, but this is decades ago.
Uh,
Two paraplegics, both result of a car accident, both the same age, both in wheelchairs. Why is it the one is bemoaning his life? My life is over. No one's ever going to love me. And the other person's out playing wheelchair basketball, having a great time. It's all up here. How
Mindset.
you want to look at
Mhm.
things.
Absolutely. I love my favorite quote um, is from Wayne Dyer. And
Okay.
he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
One of the things I try to tell people too is that you don't have to believe your thoughts.
Yeah.
First of all, look, your thoughts create your emotions, and it's never, whether it's the situation of caregiving or whatever, it's never your loved one's behavior that creates your feelings. It's how you
How
choose
you,
look at their behavior, and you
yeah,
have a choice in the way you do that.
you always have a choice.
Yeah,
You're
you have a
speaking my
choice.
language, Rick.
Good, good.
So
You have a
really,
choice, and your thoughts are not absolute truth. They're just thoughts. They're changeable. It takes a little bit of work, but you can change all of that.
yeah.
It's important. One thing I realized in my course, if I can just talk about that for a moment,
Please, yeah, please do.
is people hear the word course and, oh, I don't have time for that. But if I find an hour to myself, I want to just chill out. I understand that. But I created this course to be in very short, bite-sized little modules, a few minutes a day.
Mhm.
And, the idea is to lighten your load, take it
Mhm.
off your shoulders, not to give you one more thing to do. And based on the reviews I've had from people who've told me just that, one woman said, people are saying you're smiling again. I mean, all these great things. I tell people, I guarantee that in 2 or 3 weeks, you'll notice significant changes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just, and again, you have to look. I don't say you have to, but my way of looking at it is from the standpoint of my own health. That's my primary thing. I mean, I'm going to do everything for Sonya, of course, but I'm going to do it in a way that preserves my health, which preserves our relationship, because
I
I'm in a better
appreciate it.
mood. Uh,
What what
yeah.
a gift, and I'm always careful in how I say this too, because I'm not living as a caregiver caring for someone living with dementia, and I can see, like, in so many ways the gift that disease and that journey has given. And you're speaking so eloquently to that, is that it's given you this opportunity to see yourself in a different way, to recognize what is important in your life and what isn't,
Yeah.
to your own health, and
Yeah.
where you choose to put your energy and your attention. And yeah, I think that so often people wouldn't be presented with that opportunity to
Hmm.
really take that deep look at themselves. And
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'll throw this out for everybody who's listening. What if the biggest source of stress in your caregiving journey isn't your loved one's behavior, but your reaction to it? And that's changeable.
yeah,
And
yeah.
once I figured that out, it changed everything for how I show up for Sonya and myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
100%. 100%. I've talked in some other episodes about how the brain works, and how we have a program, we through our lives, and how we respond and react to stress. It builds a program in our brain, so that
mhm.
because we are beings that preserve energy at all costs. We're masters at preserving energy. And so literally we create shortcuts in our brain
Right.
so that we don't have to think hard all the time about every little step, like brushing our teeth and driving home from work. We can go on autopilot and do that. That also happens when we're dealing with stress. And so when we are in high states of stress, what happens is it creates an imprint in our brain. It also shuts off it literally cuts off the circulation to the more creative parts of our brain and goes into a very narrow minded way of thinking and survival.
Mhm.
So what happens is that speaks to the burnout that people experience as caregiving when they are experiencing their world as high stress. When they feel like they're failing because their loved one is getting worse, or they're trying to run around and turn the water off every time they're turning the water on, or they're in conflict with their family members, or there's a fear of the future because they don't understand. They're living in this high state of stress, and we don't have to go into all the
Mhm.
talk about how that impacts your body, but quite literally in your mind, in your brain, what is happening is you're turning off the ability to access um, potential and creativity and problem solving skills. And so the minute we are able to step outside of that and not view our lives in a high stress state,
Right.
then we can begin to enjoy the moment with our loved one, access
Oh,
spaces of
absolutely.
humor,
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
the creativity and everything you're speaking to, Rick. I'm just so, like I said, you're speaking my language. I
Oh,
love
that
your
makes you feel
course.
good.
Your course
Yeah.
sounds amazing from what you've shared about it. And I will make sure that we put a link in the
Okay, thank
show
you.
notes for people. Yeah. And
Sure.
so that they have access to it. We want them to be able to access that. Do you mind sharing how people can reach you, your Facebook group, your
Well,
um
wouldn't it be weird if I said yes? Of course not.
sweet.
Oh, my Facebook group is facebook.com/groups for family caregivers, FOR. If they want to email me, it's rick@forfamilycaregivers.com. And my course is at caregivermasterycourse.com.
Okay,
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I mean, we're all in this together. We really are. We have to support each other.
Yeah.
We really do.
So I want to touch back on the Facebook group
Yes.
because that's kind of what attracted me to you too. Is
Okay.
I also see with families over the years that they struggle because they want community, they want support, they want
Mhm.
somebody to just like-minded people going through the same thing,
Right.
and just as you stated earlier, I hear this a lot as well, that sometimes support groups can feel like it's just a venting session, or
Right.
people can leave feeling more down than when they
Mhm.
walked in. And um, nobody's looking for a Pollyanna, just feel better experience
No.
either. They want a valid, real experience and connection with others. And so can you speak a little more? You touched on it in the beginning, but I want to have an idea of what is your group like? Are you moderating it, or are they just coming in and talking, or are you
Oh,
posting certain questions, or what? Give us
if
an idea of the experience.
if you look at the about page on my group, I'm not about venting or ranting. We all know, we all understand. There's no point in my complaining to you. You've got your own complaints. My group is for the purpose of people helping each other. Well, here's what's worked for me and
Oh, okay.
posting it. I post videos every Monday and every Thursday.
Okay.
I come up with subjects. I post videos. I send out an email letting people know what I posted. And um, yeah, it just, I reply to people when they comment. in it, and other people reply. And I'm grateful that I don't see the ranting and raving that you
Right.
see in so many other groups. And
Mhm.
again, I understand the need to do that, but we all understand. So how's it help us if we get more of that same negative energy into our brain? Let's
Mhm.
find out what we can do differently and make life easier for ourselves. That's
Yeah.
really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say it again. It's like the same mantra. When you stop resisting reality and wishing things were different or trying to force them to change, we relieve an enormous portion of the stress
Yeah.
that caregiving brings. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the bottom line.
Yeah. That's
Um,
beautiful. And that can, I mean, that's applicable in all areas of life, right?
oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's, yeah,
Relationships, whatever it may be.
the universal truth.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And it's
love it.
doable. It may take a little bit of not struggling, but trying, but it's doable. We can all do it. We can all look at things differently. I was driving down the street and I saw a quote from Maya Angelou painted on the side of a building.
Oh, yeah.
And it said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude.
Mm.
I mean, there it is. You know?
Yeah, simple. Like you said, the truth is simple, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think what is so great about our conversation today, and I so appreciate you coming on and sharing
Well,
with
thank
me,
you.
really, is that we need to be seen. You need to be seen. Caregivers need to be seen.
Mhm.
It's this modeling of how it can be. Because I think what we have seen in the past is a very medical model of dementia care, that this
Mhm.
is what the doctors say, this is what the
Right.
institutions say, this is how it's supposed to go, ABCD, the cleaned up medicalized version. And that's not reality. That is
No, no.
not reality at all. And then the flip side that people get is this very depressing, heavy
Right.
idea of what life is going to look like and will look like,
Mhm.
um, and there is so much more. And when people like you are honestly sharing about your experience and sharing about how you have moved through it and changed your mindset, and how life can look different, how you look forward to spending time with your wife, and how,
Mhm.
like, people just need to see that. So I'm just happy to be sharing your story and your journey here.
Well, good. You've given me the you've given me a reason to share that part about with Sonya with more people, because I used to think, well, if I put that out there, they're gonna say, "Oh, what a jerk," or whatever, and get hate
Mhm.
mail, because their lives
Yeah.
are so much different, maybe.
Yeah.
But thank you for giving me that confidence. I appreciate
No,
it.
seriously. What is I'm gonna totally butcher this. Maybe you can help me with
Okay.
this. But what is there's the see, I can't even remember how many minutes. What is the world record in running the? Is it the 4 minute mile? Is that what it's
Yeah, well,
called?
it's under
The
4 minutes. It's been under
under.
that. I
Okay,
don't know
yeah.
what it is.
Thank
It's
you.
three
I
minutes
didn't.
something. Yeah.
Okay, that's good
Yeah.
enough. I thought I was gonna really
Yeah.
slaughter it, but that concept of however many years ago, 50 years ago, they scientifically thought that a human being could not run a
Right.
mile in less than whatever it was. I don't know,
Right.
8 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And how when one person broke that record, suddenly many people were breaking that
Hmm.
record, and it's just for some reason I'm really thinking about that with what I'm saying about your work and others, is that when more people are sharing, hey, it doesn't have to look like this. Yes,
Hmm.
it's not desirable. Nobody wants this. And yet you can have a whole different experience than what the medical
Hmm.
model is sharing with you, or what,
Hmm.
someone else is. That's where more people are going to see it and be impacted by it and have their own similar experience. So
No, that's true. Here's an interesting thought. Be grateful. What? Grateful? What should I be grateful for? Be grateful that this didn't happen 10 years earlier because now you have 10 more years of memories with your loved one.
Right.
You
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Rick. Yeah.
know?
Is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you feel like would be helpful for others to hear or know?
Well, one thing is this came up early on with Sonya when she was at the memory care facility. A friend invited me and a few other people over for dinner, but she thought at the time that maybe it's not maybe overwhelming for Sonya. I mean, she was looking at it from a good place, and I thought, well, we've all gotten together for all these years, and if Sonya's not going to go, I'm not going to go. Well, who did that benefit? No one. Doesn't if by denying by the caregiver or by myself denying myself doesn't improve my loved one's quality of life, it only diminishes mine.
Wow.
So I make sure I still socialize. I get together with people.
Yeah.
Either I'll have somebody look after Sonia, my one of my sons, or I have a neighbor across the street who is a caregiver, and she'll come over. I don't do it to excess. I mean, a few times a month, and on the weekends I try to do things with Sonia and friends, everybody included. But yeah, I realized when I didn't go that sitting in the corner moping or whatever isn't going to benefit me. And you
Yeah.
also have to ask yourself if things were reversed, would you want that for your loved one? For them to be unhappy and sad and not do anything for however many years it may take?
Right. Right.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course
Yeah.
not.
That is great advice. I can think of two clients that are going to love that need to
Okay,
hear
good,
that.
good,
No, it's
good.
true. Yeah. Yeah. Changing that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Rick, thank you so
Oh,
much.
my pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was really, really great to meet you. And
I love seeing that smile on your face. That's nice.
ah, well, people know this is such a passion of mine
Yeah.
to just bring help people understand they're not alone in the
Right.
journey. When you meet with so many people one on one over the years,
Hmm.
and everybody is saying the same thing. That's why I just wanted to reach more people and really help people understand they're not alone in their thoughts or their feelings or their experiences or
Hmm.
their fears or their anger or their guilt,
Right.
or it's part of being human. And
Absolutely.
yeah, this is a platform, and you sharing so much today is really just going to be validating to
Oh,
so
it's my
many.
pleasure. It really is.
Awesome.
I thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, I will let you go, and
All right.
we will hopefully connect later. That's
I hope
my
so.
goal.
All
All
right.
right. Take
You
care,
take
Rick.
care.